So this moves us to the second one, which is this issue of fundamentals, or I think what's called in, in the community of people who train motivational interviewing is what is called the spirit of motivational interviewing. That there's really 4 dimensions, if you will, that come in the spirit. And they are the partnership. They are the idea of compassion. And compassion is this ability to sit with the suffering. There's the radical acceptance, my terms, but radical acceptance is that, this is their perception of the world. Doesn't matter whether I agree with it or not. And so how do you have radical acceptance for people? And then finally believe in them. Just, this empowerment. That if you have a right attitude and you're skillful at those attitudes, then what ends up happening is that it empowers people. It makes the self-determination lean towards health. And so, what we're trying to do is to think about, in the spirit of motivational interviewing, when you hear that, how does that all land on you?
The part that I hear the most and feel the most is the empowerment piece, because the wisdom lies within them. And I think they are the expert in their own life, and we might be the expert in, the nutrition part or whatever, but the people that we're having these conversations with are the expert in their own life. And, circling back to what we said before, listening for that and affirming that and bringing that to them and highlighting the strengths that they have to be able to do whatever it is that they decide to do.
But this is, and I appreciate you saying that, but most people don't have many desires other than to survive. I mean, people do all kinds of things just to survive. I mean, they throw food into their body because they're hungry, but they don't even know what they're throwing in there. They're using drugs to maintain the pain that's in their body. They really struggle with beyond survival. So when you talk about empowerment, or they have a whisper within them, or they have their own wisdom, the people who struggle, they don't believe they have any wisdom other than, how do I get through the day?
I think that's where MI comes into play, to be able to listen for that and acknowledge that and move away from trying to have the answers and have the solutions and try to fix that.
Right, so what you're saying is that's where compassion comes.
Yeah.
Compassion comes that, the way through this is to be able to sit with that suffering.
Right.
And to do that skillfully. Yeah. But you're saying something like somehow that's enough.
The sitting with, or the
empowerment? Yeah, just the compassion is enough. Like if people are saying to you, when I go to the grocery store, I have not enough money.
Yeah.
I have a card that the government gave me, in which they make sure that I don't have very much. So I put in there what's going to fill me up. I don't know what you're talking about in terms of wisdom.
I see where you're going with this. And so it's, when people are trying to just survive, it's how do we help them do that? How do we help? I'm not being very eloquent in my words here. It's when I would work with patients that were food insecure and they didn't know where their next meal was coming from. being able to sit with them, talk with them, hear what is working for them at the time, what options do they see, and then how are we able to help fill in some of those gaps to help them.
So you have
Get more
something
secure.
here that says that they still have wisdom, even in that
Yes.
food insecurity.
Yes,
That they have figured out a map. They just don't know it as a map. They just feel
Yes.
the insecurity.
yes,
And that you believe that they have already have talent.
yes,
They already have some wisdom to even putting the fatty foods
Right.
in the thing is like, that's wisdom.
right. Well,
Whether
they're-
it's right or wrong doesn't really matter. It's still wisdom.
they're feeding themselves, they're feeding their family.
Yeah,
And
and they're trying to do it as cheaply as possible and so on.
Exactly.
So you're really thinking about how does the helper,
Yeah.
how does the coach, the person that's trying to serve another, see what people are doing as positive and as optimistically to reach the values of their lives.
Right,
And instead of, this is a problem.
right,
And that's really when you're talking about the spirit.
yes, yeah,
And that's hard because when people are suffering, well, why wouldn't I try to help them?
you want to fix it.
Yeah, why not?
I mean, and-
I mean, all I have to do is give them this information.
yeah, yeah. But as I look at it, it's going back to what we talked about in that first segment, which is what have they already done? What have they done? Where have they been? Where have they brought in ingenuity in order to be able to survive as, like what you were saying before?
Yeah, but their son is 15 pounds overweight and he's going to be bullied because of it. Why shouldn't I just give them a map?
Because our map is not their map.
But the map is based on science. We know what kinds of foods, what kinds of things that people need. Why not tell them?
It's hard not to sometimes because you want to help,
Right.
but we are not going to know what works for them until we have the conversation of where they are, and I hear, with the compassion piece, I think that was something that I had to balance because I feel so deeply and it drives me to want to fix things. And you have to pull back from that because we're not going to be able to fix it. But in having the...
Sure we are. Actually, we can certainly, we can design a menu for this family. We could help this drug addict. We could help people by if they just do X, Y, and Z.
But then we're becoming the expert.
But we are.
But we're not. And I think that's
What
where...
do you mean we're not?
We're-
I mean, everybody's expecting us to help this young person who has 15 pounds overweight and is going to be, if he's a boy, is going to be bullied.
Yes.
And that bulliness is
Yes.
going to change the dynamics of his life.
Yes. And you're absolutely right with that. And I heard it a lot with the kids that I worked with. I think the other part where my mind goes with this, thinking of food coaches, thinking of the families that you're likely going to be working with, is how are you also I would say empowering the parent to also be working with the child to be able to come up with what works for them. If we're able to if we're having a compassionate conversation and we ask permission before we offer some ideas to see what might work, we will be able to get somewhere. But it's working together. I think it goes to the partnership that you mentioned in spirit. Like, we are in it with them. We're partnering with them to find what is going to work for them, because it's their life. Telling someone, you think about diet culture, you think about all of this information coming out, it has to be fresh fruits and vegetables, it has to be, lean cuts of meat. It doesn't. There's ways to eat healthfully. There's ways to bring in the conversation and the spirit of MI and the partnership. What sorts of things are you liking? What sorts of things are you buying right now? What are the health concerns of your child, for you? So that we're able to talk through what are some options, and you can say, you know what, I think that this would work for me. And they could also say, you know what, this won't work for me. Thank you for telling me that. What ideas do you have that might work? And we can continue to hammer it.
But when you feel as though you don't matter,
Yeah.
you're not going to say back to people, that's not going to work for me.
Yeah.
You're just going to go, okay. And then you're going to feel bad about yourself.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
So what I really loved, as you said, is like, you've got to listen with a particular attitude. And that attitude is partnership, that you do not know. You don't know how this individual sees the world. And that you've got to meet them with compassion, which is a skill set of sitting with their suffering. And then radical acceptance is like, this is it, this is how they see it, this is their perception of the world. I told a story today about being a guide, walking along somebody with a hike, And you, as a guide, you're thinking, I want to show him the bird nest that's sitting up there in the tree. And I go, as your guide, I want you to see that. When in fact, motivational interviewing is noticing that they're looking down at the ground at the groundhog hole, and that they're curious about that. And that's radical acceptance. Like, watch what matters to them. Watch what they speak about, what's important to them. That's what you were talking about. Watch their reactions to your empathy, to your compassion. Because, this is unusual for them to have that level of compassion. Now, the field is really, people have said, well, you can give people too much compassion and then you're tired and exhausted and so on. I'm not sure that that's true. I think the fatigue comes from, how am I going to get them to do what I think is right for their family?
Well, and you mentioned it, and I'm kind of surprised it hasn't come up already, the curiosity piece.
Mm.
And so, being able to approach a conversation through the lens of curiosity pulls the risk of judgment out.
Mm.
So if you're able to come at it through the lens of curiosity, that you are truly wanting to hear their perspective, their point of view, it removes the risk of judgment that would creep in. And so I'm hoping you can talk about...
Except, as we finish up this spirit of MI, when you mention curiosity, I think, how is curiosity compassion? How is curiosity radical acceptance? And it often isn't. I think the only antidote as a spirit, the only skill, is actually empathetic understanding. That's the one that says, I can do both of these. I can do compassion, which is to sit with your suffering and to hear what matters to you. And I also can do radical acceptance, because I'm no longer in my head, I'm in my heart. And I think the spirit of that partnership and the radical acceptance and the compassion, which leads to an empowerment, because I'm listening for your own ideas here, your own thoughts, is really the sort of, I don't know, fundamentals, actually. The actual research shows that if you could do that, even if you're not very skillful,
Yeah.
that people move. And right now, we rely a lot on screening tools and assessments and curiosity in terms of questions, when in fact it looks like empathy is the antidote, is the way in to radical acceptance, the way into demonstrating compassion.
And the empathy builds trust.
And that trust is an emotional trust fund that moves you to the place where you can offer ideas.
Yeah.
Which is, again, taking us back to the first phrase that we used before, which is we change people through the heart, i.e. engagement, and then through the mind. We can offer something. We can bring something to the, like, would you be open to this? Would you be open to that? And as you said earlier, asking permission.
Yeah.
We're going to have to pause here, but we're coming back to the skills of motivational interviewing.